Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, Shalom, Ni hao, Buenos dias, Heseche, Akwaba, Belkumin, what up, though? This is weekly recorded recitations of Holy Scriptures, Tobate Gokadao. The date today is 124.12.18, semicolon 72, semicolon 1, new 8. The portion for this week is 49, which is Ki Teitzei, which includes within the Torah, Ki Teitzei, which is Devarim 21:10 a 25:19. Within the Bhagavad Gita, it is the Kesetria Yavi Bhaga Yogehe, which is numero 13. Within the Digha Nikaya, it is the Dasutara Sutta, which is the concluding sutta of the Digha Nikaya. Within the Gospels, it is Acts 13 a 15. Within the Quran, it is Surah Abasa, Surah Al-Takwir, Surah Al-Intafar, Surah Al-Mutafifin, and Surah Inshikak, which are 80 a 84. And within the Tao Te Ching, it is chapters 46 a 51. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahu Akbar. Deus noster qui es in celis, sanctificato nomen tuum, vahegu sanam. Dao kodao fehudao. Ja. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Kyrie eleison. Silva mastu savajagatahi. Sabe sata bhavantu sukhitata. Vagabia. Ubuntu. Shabana. Fekako. Akwaba. Upendo na amani. Umjikam. Sheshe. Kamosunida. Domo arakat. Pelama yellow wakantaka. Tokodogo shingu. God, we thank you for all that you bless us. Go in the God. Atajami yatafanami aho. Om shanti shanti shanti. Amen. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahu Akbar. Deus noster qui es in celis, sanctificato nomen tuum, vahegu sanam. Dao kodao fehudao. Ja. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher gazanu b'mitzvotav v'zivan l'sok b'divai Torah. Amen. Kyrie eleison. Silva mastu savajagatahe. Sabe sata bhavantu sukhitata. Vagabia. Ubuntu. Shabana. Fekako. Akwaba. Upendo na amani. Umjikam. Sheshe. Kamosunida. Domo arigato. Pilama yela wakantaka. Talk adoka shengun. God, we thank you for all that you bless us. Go in the God. Atajami yatafanami. Aho. Om shanti shanti shanti. Amen. Torah, Ki Teitzei, Devarim 21:10 a 25:19. If you go out to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God will deliver him into your hands, and you take his captives, and you see amongst the captives a beautiful woman, and you desire her, you may take her for yourself as a wife. You shall bring her into your home, and she shall shave her head and let her nails grow. And she shall remove the garment of her captivity from upon herself, and stay in your house, and weep for her far and her more for a full month. After that you may be intimate with her and possess her, and she will be a wife for you. And it will be, if you do not desire her, then you shall send her away wherever she wishes, but you shall not sell her for money. You shall not keep her as a servant, because you have afflicted her. If a man has 2 wives, one beloved and the other despised, and they bear him sons, the beloved one and the despised one, and the firstborn son is from the despised one. Then it will be, on the day he, the husband, bequeaths his property to his sons, that he will not be able to give the son of the beloved wife birthright precedence over the son of the despised wife, the actual firstborn son. Rather, he must acknowledge the firstborn, the son of the despised wife, and give him a double share in all that he possesses, because he, this firstborn son, is the first of his strength. Then he has the birthright entitlement. If a man has a wayward and rebellious son who does not obey his far or his more, and they chasten him, and he still does not listen to them, His far and his more shall take hold of him, and bring him out to the elders of his city, and to the gate of his place. And they shall say to the elders of his city, This son of ours is wayward and rebellious, he does not obey us, he is a glutton and a guzzler. And all the men of his city shall pelt him to death with stones, and he shall die. So you shall clear out the evil from amongst you, and all Israel will listen and fear. If a man commits a sin for which he is sentenced to death, and he is put to death, you shall then hang him on a pole. But you shall not leave his body on the pole overnight. Rather, you shall bury him on that same day, for a hanging human corpse is a blasphemy of God, and you shall not defile your land, which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. You shall not see your brother's ox or sheep straying and ignore them. Rather, you shall return them to your brother. But if your brother is not near you, or if you do not know him, you shall bring it into your house, and it shall be with you until your brother seeks it out, whereupon you shall return it to him. So shall you do with his donkey, and so shall you do with his garment, and so shall you do with any lost article of your brother which he has lost and you have found. You shall not ignore it. You shall not see your brother's donkey or his ox fallen under its load on the road and ignore them. Rather, you shall pick up the load with him. A man's attire shall not be on a woman, nor may a man wear a woman's garment, because whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord your God. If a bird's nest chances before you on the road, on any tree, or on the ground, and it contains fledglings or eggs, if the mother is sitting upon the fledglings or upon the eggs, you shall not take the more upon the young. You shall send away the more, and then you may take the young for yourself, in order that it should be beneficial for you, and you should lengthen your days. When you build a new house, you shall make a guardrail for your roof, so that you shall not cause blood to be spilled in your house, that the one who falls should fall from it, the roof. You shall not sow your vineyard together with a mixed variety of species, lest the increase, even the seed that you sow, and the yield of the vineyard both become forbidden. You shall not plow with an ox and a donkey together. You shall not wear a mixture of wool and linen together. You shall make yourself twisted threads on the four corners of your garment, with which you cover yourself. If a man takes a wife, is intimate with her, and despises her, and he makes libelous charges against her, and gives her a bad name, saying, I took this woman, and when I came to her, I did not find any evidence of virginity for her. Then the girl's far and her more shall obtain evidence of the girl's virginity, and take it out to the elders of the city, to the gate. And the girl's far shall say to the elders, I gave my daughter to this man as a wife, and he despised her. And behold, he made libelous charges, saying, I did not find evidence of your daughter's virginity, but this is the evidence of my daughter's virginity. And they shall spread the garment before the elders of the city. Then the elders of that city shall take the man and chasten him. And they shall fine him 100 shekels of silver, because he defamed a virgin of Israel, and he give it to the girl's far, and she shall be his wife. He shall not send her away all the days of his life. But if this matter was true, indeed no evidence of the girl's virginity was found, they shall take the girl out to the entrance of her father's house, and the men of her city shall pelt her with stones, and she shall die, for she did a disgraceful thing in Israel, to commit adultery in her father's house. So shall you clear away the evil from amongst you. If a man is found lying with a married woman, even both of them shall die, the man lying with the woman, and the woman. So shall you clear away the evil from Israel. If there is a virgin girl betrothed to a man, and another man finds her in the city and lies with her, you shall take them both out to the gate of that city, and you shall pelt them with stones, and they shall die. The girl because she did not cry out, even though she was in the city, and the man because he violated his neighbor's wife. So shall you clear away the evil from amongst you. But if a man finds the betrothed girl in the field, and the man overpowers her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. Whereas to the girl you shall do nothing. To the girl you shall do nothing. The girl did not commit a sin deserving of death. For just as a man rises up against his fellow and murders him, so is this case. Because he found her in the field, the betrothed girl had cried out, but there was no one to save her. If a man finds a virgin girl who was not betrothed, and seizes her, and lies with her, and they are found, the man who lay with her shall give 50 shekels of silver to the girl's far, and she shall become his wife, because he violated her. He shall not send her away all the days of his life. A man shall not take his far's wife, nor shall he uncover the corner of his far's cloak. A man with injured testicles or whose member is cut may not enter the assembly of the Lord. A bastard shall not enter the assembly of the Lord. Even the 10th generation shall not enter the assembly of the Lord. An Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter the assembly of the Lord. Even the 10th generation shall never enter the assembly of the Lord. Because they did not greet you with bread and water on the way when you left Egypt, and because the people of Moab, hired Balaam the son of Beor from Petor in Aram Naharaim against you to curse you. But the Lord your God did not want to listen to Balaam. So the Lord your God transformed the curse into a blessing for you, because the Lord your God loves you. You shall not ever seek out their welfare or their benevolence all your days. You shall not despise an Edomite, for he is your brother. You shall not despise an Egyptian, for you were a sojourner in his land. Children who are born to them in the 3rd generation may enter the assembly of the Lord. When a camp goes out against your enemies, you shall beware of everything evil. If there is amongst you a man who is unclean because of a nocturnal emission, he shall go outside the camp. He shall not come within the camp. And it shall be towards evening he shall bathe in water, and when the soleil sets, he may come within the camp. And you shall have a designated place outside the camp, so that you can go out there to utilize it as a privy. And you shall keep a stake in addition to your weapons, and it shall be when you sit down outside to relieve yourself, you shall dig with it, and you shall return and cover your excrement. For the Lord your God goes along in the midst of your camp to rescue you and to deliver your enemies before you. Therefore your camp shall be holy, so that Adonai should not see anything unseemly amongst you and would turn away from you. You shall not deliver a slave to his master if he seeks refuge with you from his master. Rather he shall be allowed to reside amongst you wherever he chooses within any of your cities where it is beneficial for him. You shall not oppress him. There shall not be a prostitute of the daughters of Israel, and there shall not be a male prostitute of the sons of Israel. You shall not bring a prostitute's fee or the price of a dog to the house of the Lord your God for any vow, because both of them are an abomination to the Lord your God. You shall not give interest to your brother, whether it be interest on money, interest on food, or interest on any other item for which interest is normally taken. You may, however, give interest to a Gentile, but to your brother you shall not give interest, in order that the Lord your God shall bless you in every one of your endeavors on the land to which you are coming to possess. When you make a vow to the Lord your God, you shall not delay in paying it, for the Lord your God will demand it of you, and it will be counted as a sin for you. But if you shall refrain from making vows, you will have no sin. Observe and do what is emitted from your lips, just as you have pledged to the Lord your God as a donation which you have spoken with your mouth. When you enter your neighbor's vineyard, you may eat as many grapes as you desire until you are sated, but you shall not put any into your vessel. When you enter your neighbor's standing grain, you may pick the ears with your hand, but you shall not lift a sickle upon your neighbor's standing grain. When a man takes a wife and is intimate with her, and it happens that she does not find favor in his eyes, because he discovers in her an unseemly virtuous matter, and he writes for her a bill of divorce and places it into her hand and sends her away from his house, and she leaves his house and goes and marries another man, if the latter husband hates her and writes her a bill of divorce and places it into her hand and sends her away from his house, or if the latter husband who took her as a wife dies, her first husband who had sent her away may not take her again to be his wife, since she was defiled to him. For that is an abomination before the Lord, and you shall not bring sin to the land the Lord your God gives you for an inheritance. When a man takes a new wife, he shall not go out in the army, nor shall he be subjected to anything associated with it. He shall remain free for his home for 1 year, and delight his wife whom he has taken. One shall not take the lower or the upper millstone as security for a loan, because he is taking a life as security. If a man is discovered kidnapping any person from amongst his brothers of the children of Israel, and treats him as a slave and sells him, that thief shall die, so that you shall clear out the evil from amongst you. Be cautious regarding the legion of Zera'at, to observe meticulously, and you shall do according to all that the Levite priests instruct you. As I have commanded them, so shall you observe to do. Remember what the Lord your God did to Miriam on the way when you went out of Egypt, when you lend your fellow Jew, your fellow brother, an item. You shall not enter his home to take his security. You shall stand outside, and the man to whom you are extending the loan shall bring the security to you outside. And if he is a poor man, you shall not lie down to sleep with his security. You shall return the security to him by soleil set, so that he may lie down to sleep in his garment, and he will bless you, and it will be counted for you as merit before the Lord your God. You shall not withhold the wages of a poor or destitute hired worker, or your brothers, or of your strangers who are in your land within your cities. You shall give him his wage on his day, and not let the soleil set over it, for he is poor and he risks his life for it, so that he should not cry out to the Lord against you, so that there should be sin upon you. Far shall not be put to death because of sons, nor shall sons be put to death because of fars. Each man shall be put to death for his own transgression. You shall not pervert the judgment of a stranger or an orphan, and you shall not take a widow's garment as security for a loan. You shall remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you from there. Therefore I command you to do this thing. When you reap your harvest in your field, and forget a sheaf in the field, you shall not go back to take it. It shall be left for the stranger, the orphan, and the widow, so that the Lord your God will bless you in all that you do. When you beat your olive tree, you shall not deglorify it by picking all its fruit after you. It shall be left for the stranger, the orphan, and the widow. When you pick the grapes of your vineyard, you shall not glean after you. It shall be left for the stranger, the orphan, and the widow. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. Therefore I command you to do this thing. If there is a quarrel between men, and they approach the tribunal, and the judges judge them, and they acquit the innocent one and condemn the guilty one, and it shall be, if the guilty one has incurred the penalty of lashes, that the judge shall make him lean over and flog him in front of him, commensurate with his crime in number. He shall flog him with 40 lashes. He shall not exceed, lest he give him a much further severe flogging than these 40 lashes, and your brother will be degraded before your eyes. You shall not muzzle an ox when it is threshing the grain. If brothers reside together, and one of them dies, having no son, the dead man's wife shall not marry an outsider. Rather, her husband's brother shall be intimate with her, making her a wife for himself, thus performing the obligation of a husband's brother with her. And it will be that the eldest brother who performs the Levirate marriage, if she can bear, will succeed in the name of his deceased brother, so that his deceased brother's name shall not be obliterated from Israel. But if a man does not wish to take his brother's wife, the brother's wife shall go up to the gate to the elders and say, my husband's brother has refused to perpetuate his brother's name in Israel. He does not wish to perform the obligation of a husband's brother with me. Then the elders of his city shall call him and speak to him, and he shall stand up and say, I do not wish to take her. Then his brother's wife shall approach him before the eyes of the elders, and remove his shoe from his foot, and she shall spit before his face, and answer him, and say, thus shall be done to the man who will not build up his brother's household. And that family shall be called in Israel the family of the one whose shoe was removed. If two men, a man and his brother, are fighting together, and the wife of the one of them approaches to rescue her husband from his assailant, and she stretches forth her hand and grabs hold of his private parts, you shall cut off her hand. You shall not have pity. You shall not keep in your pouch 2 different weights, one large and one small. You shall not keep in your house 2 different ephah measures, one large and one small. Rather, you shall have a full and honest weight and a full and honest ephah measure, in order that your days will be prolonged on the day which the Lord your God gives you. For whoever does these things, whoever perpetuates such injustice, is an abomination to the Lord your God. You shall remember what Amalek did to you on the way when you went out of Egypt, how he happened upon you on the way and cut off all the stragglers at your rear, when you were faint and weary, and he did not fear God. Therefore it will be, when the Lord your God grants you respite from all your enemies around you in the land which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance to possess, that you shall obliterate the remembrance of Amalek from beneath the heavens. You shall not forget. Bhagavad Gita, Ki Teitzei Yavi Bhaga Yogehe. 13. Arjuna said, Prakriti and Purusha, the field and the knower of the field, knowledge and that which is to be known. All this, O Kaseva, I desire to learn. Sri Krishna said, This body, O son of Kunti, is called the field, and he who knows it is called the knower of the field by those who describe them. And know that I am the knower in all fields, O Bharata, and only the knowledge of the field and its knower do I regard as true knowledge. Hear briefly from me what the field is, what its nature is, what its modifications are, whence it comes, who its owner is, and what the knower's powers are. All this has been sung by the sages in many and different ways in various distinctive hymns, and also in well-reasoned and convincing passages indicative of Brahman. The great elements, I consciousness, understanding, and the unmanifested, the 10 stories, the mind, the 5 objects of the senses. Desire, hatred, pleasure, pain, the aggregate, intelligence, and fortitude. This, briefly stated, is the field together with its modifications. Humility, modesty, non-violence, forbearance, and uprightness, service to the teacher, purity, steadfastness, and self-control. Dispassion towards sense objects, absence of ego, perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, sickness, and pain. Non-attachment, non-identification of self with children, wife, home, and the rest. Unvarying evenness of mind in the midst of agreeable and disagreeable events. Unswerving devotion to me through constant meditation of non-separation, resorting to solitude, aversion to the society of men, constancy in the knowledge of the self, and an insight into the object of the knowledge of truth. This is declared to be knowledge, and all that is contrary to it is ignorance. I will now describe that which ought to be known, through the knowing of which one attains eternity, eternal life. It is the Supreme Brahma, which is without beginning and is said to be neither being nor non-being. Its hands and feet are everywhere. Its eyes, heads, and faces are everywhere. Its ears are everywhere. Its existence envelops all. It shines through the functions of all the senses, and yet it is devoid of senses. It is attached, and yet it sustains all. It is devoid of gunas, and yet it enjoys them. It is without and within all beings. It is unmoving and also moving. It is incomprehensible because it is subtle. It is distantly away, and yet it is near. It is indivisible, and yet it is, as it were, divided amongst beings. That knowable Brahman is the sustainer of all beings, and also their devourer and generator. Thus, briefly have been set forth the field and also knowledge and the object of knowledge. My devotee who understands this becomes worthy of my state. Know that Prakriti and Purusha are both without beginning, and know too that all forms and gunas are born of Prakriti. Prakriti is said to be the cause of the generation of the body and the organs, and Purusha is said to be the cause of the experience of pleasure and pain. Purusha, embodied in Prakriti, experiences the gunas born of Prakriti. It is attachment to these gunas that is the cause of Purusha's birth in benevolent and evil wombs. The Supreme Spirit in the body is said to be the one who is the witness and the approver, the supporter and the enjoyer, and who is the sovereign Lord and the highest self. He who thus knows Purusha and Prakriti along with the Gunas is not born again, howsoever he may comport himself. Some by meditation perceive the self in themselves through the mind, some by devotion to knowledge, and some by devotion to work. And there are yet some who do not know it by these means. They hear of it from others and worship. They too pass beyond death through their devotion to what they have heard. Whatever is born, whether animate or inanimate, know, O Bharata Prince, that it is through union of the field and the knower of the field. He who sees the Supreme Lord abiding alike in all beings and not perishing when they perish, verily he alone sees. Because he sees the Lord present and alike everywhere, he does not injure self by self, and thus he reaches the supreme state. He who sees that all actions are done only by Prakriti and that the self is actionless, verily he alone sees. When he sees that the manifold nature of beings is centered in the one and that all evolution is from that one alone, he becomes one with Brahman. Having no beginning and possessing no gunas, this supreme and imperishable self, O son of Kuti, neither acts nor is stained by action even whilst dwelling in the body. As the akasha that pervades all things is not stained because of its subtlety, even so the self dwelling in the body everywhere is not stained. As the soleil illumines the whole world, so does the self who dwells in the body, O Bharata, illumine the whole body. They who perceive with the eye of wisdom this distinction between the field and the knower of the field, and also the deliverance from Prakriti, the cause of all beings, they attain the Supreme. Dasatara Sutta, Digha Nikaya, Dasutara Sutta. Thus have I heard. The Exalted One was once staying at Kampa on the banks of the lake Gagara with a great company of the brethren, about 500 in number. There the Venerable Sariputta addressed them, saying, Friends, brethren. Yes, friend, responded the brethren, and the Venerable Sariputta spake thus. In groups from 1 to 10 will I declare the Dharma, that so ye may nibbana win, that ye may make an end of ill and pain, that ye may be free from every bond set free. That ye may be from every bond set free. Uno. There is one thing, friends, that helpeth much, one thing that is to be developed, one that is to be understood, one that is to be eliminated, one that belongs to disaster, one that leads to distinction, one that is hard to penetrate, one that is to be brought to pass, one that is to be thoroughly learnt, one that is to be realized. Which one thing helpeth much? Zeal in things that are benevolent. Which one thing is to be developed? Mindfulness with respect to the bodily factors, accompanied by a pleasurable feeling. Which one thing is to be understood? Contact as a condition of intoxicants, asavas, and of grasping. Which one thing is to be eliminated? The conceit, I am. Which one thing belongs to decline? Disorderly thinking. Which one thing leads to distinction? Orderly thinking. Which one thing is hard to penetrate? Immediacy of cessation and mental concentration. Which one thing is to be brought to pass? Sure and unshakable knowledge. Which one thing is to be thoroughly learnt? All beings are maintained by causes. Which one thing is to be realized? Sure and unshakable emancipation of mind. Now these 10 things are genuine, true, thus, not otherwise, not different, perfectly comprehended by the Tathagata. Dos. There are two things friends, that helpeth much, two things that are to be developed, two things that are to be understood, two things that are to be eliminated, two things that belong to disaster, two things that lead to distinction, two things that are hard to penetrate, two things that are to be brought to pass, two things that are to be thoroughly learnt, two things that are to be realized. Which two helpeth much? Mindfulness and deliberation. Which two are to be developed? Calm and insight. Which two are to be understood? Mind and body. Which two are to be eliminated? Ignorance and the craving for rebirth. Which two belong to decline? Contumacy and friendship with evil. Which two lead to distinction? Suavity and friendship with benevolence. Which two are hard to penetrate? That which is the condition, the cause, the corruption of beings, and that which is the condition, the cause of their purification. Which two are to be brought to pass? Insight into extinction and insight into not coming to be. Which two are to be thoroughly learnt? Two elements, to wit, the condition and the unconditioned. Which two are to be realized? Supernormal knowledge and emancipation. Now, these twofold things are genuine, thus not otherwise, not different, and perfectly comprehended by the Tathagata. 3. There are three things, friends, that helpeth much, three things that are to be developed, three things that are to be understood, three things that are to be eliminated, three things that belong to disaster, three things that lead to distinction, three things that are hard to penetrate, three things that are to be brought to pass, three things that are to be thoroughly learnt, three things that are to be realized. Which three help much? Intercourse with noble-minded persons, hearing the benevolent doctrine, hearing the benevolent Dharma, progress in doctrine and minor doctrines. Which three are to be developed? The three modes of concentrative thought, to wit, mental application followed by sustained thought with mental application, concentrative thought without either. Which three are to be understood? Three modes of feeling, to wit, pleasurable, painful, and neutral feeling. Which three are to be eliminated? Three cravings, to wit, sensual, worldly, craving for rebirth, craving to end life. Which three belong to decline? Three roots of demerit, to wit, greed, hate, illusion. Which three lead to distinction? Three roots of merit, to wit, disinterestedness, love, intelligence. Which three are hard to penetrate? Three elements of deliverance, to wit, renunciation, this is the escape from all worldly desires, the immaterial, this is the escape from material things, but whatever has become is condition has arisen from a cause. The escape from that is cessation. Which three are to be brought to pass? Three knowledges, to wit, as to the past, the present, as to the past, the future, and the present. Which three are to be thoroughly learnt? Three elements, to wit, the element of sensuous desires, of rupa and arupa. Which three are to be realized? Three branches of wisdom, to wit, intuition of former births, intuition of the diseases and rebirths of beings, intuition of the extinction of intoxicants. Now these three things are genuine, true, thus not otherwise, not different, perfectly comprehended by the Tathagata. 4. There are four things, friends, that help with much, four things that are to be developed, four things that are to be understood, four things that are to be eliminated, four things that belong to disaster, four things that lead to distinction, four things that are hard to penetrate, four things that are to be brought to pass, four things that are to be thoroughly learnt, four things that are to be realized. Which four help with much? 4 wheels, to wit, the orbit of a favorable place of residence, the orbit of association with the benevolent, perfect adjustment of one's self, the cycle of merit wrought in the past. Which four to be developed? The 4 applications of mindfulness, to wit, herein, friends, a brother as to the body, feelings, thought, and ideas continue so to look upon each of these 4 groups that it remains ardent, self-possessed, and mindful, and can suppress both the hankering and the dejection common in the world. Which 4 to be understood? The 4 nutriments, to which solid nutriment, gross or subtle, contact as second, the purposes of the mind as third, rebirth consciousness as fourth. Which 4 to be eliminated? The 4 floods of sensuous desires, re-becoming, erroneous opinions, ignorance. Which 4 belong to decline? The 4 bonds of sensuous desires, re-becoming, erroneous opinions, ignorance. Which 4 lead to distinction? The 4 detachments, to wit, detachment from serious sensuous desires, re-becoming, erroneous opinions, ignorance. Which 4 are hard to penetrate? The 4 concentrations, to wit, that leading to decline, that leading to maintenance, that leading to distinction, that leading to nibbana. which four are to be brought to pass. The four knowledges, to wit, knowledge of the Dharma, knowledge of its corollaries, knowledge of what is in another's consciousness, and popular knowledge, which four are to be thoroughly learnt. The four Aryan truth, which, to wit, the Aryan truth as to ill, and the Aryan truth as to the genesis of ill, the cessation of ill, the path leading to the cessation of ill, which four are to be realized. The four fruits of the recluse's life, to wit, the fruit of each path, that of the stream winner and once returner, of never returning, of arahatship. Now these four things are genuine, true, thus not otherwise, not different, perfectly comprehended by the Tathagata. 5. There are 5 things, friends, that help with much, 5 things that are to be developed, 5 things that are to be understood, 5 things that are to be eliminated, 5 things that belong to disaster, 5 things that lead to distinction, 5 things that are hard to penetrate, 5 things that are to be brought to pass, 5 things that are to be thoroughly learnt, 5 things that are to be realized. Which 5 help much? 5 factors in spiritual wrestling: confidence or faith, benevolent health, honesty, energy, insight. Which 5 are to be developed? The 5 factors of perfect concentration, to wit, suffusion of rapture, suffusion of easeful bliss, suffusion of telepathic consciousness, suffusion of light and images for a retrospective thought. Which 5 are to be understood? The 5 aggregates of grasping, to wit, material qualities, feeling, perception, volitional, and other complexes, consciousness. Which 5 are to be eliminated? The 5 hindrances, to wit, sensuality, malevolence, sloth and torpor, excitement, and worrying doubt. Which 5 belong to decline? The 5 spiritual barrennesses, to wit, uno, herein a brother doubts, is perplexed about the master, comes to no definite choice, is not satisfied. He being thus, his mind does not incline towards ardor, devotion, perseverance, exertion. This is the first barrenness. When he doubts, is perplexed about the Dharma, the Sangha, the training. These are in order the second, third, and fourth barrennesses. When he is offended with his fellow disciples, vexed, agitated, sterile towards them, he being thus, his mind does not incline towards ardor, additionally. Which 5 belong to distinction? The 5 spiritual faculties, to wit, faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, insight. Which 5 are hard to penetrate? Uno, the 5 elements favorable to deliverance, to wit, herein, friends, when a brother is contemplating sensuous desires, his heart does not leap forward to them, nor rest complacent in them, does not choose them. But when he is contemplating renunciation of them, his heart leaps forward, rests complacent in it, chooses it. This frame of mind he gets well in hand, well developed, well lifted up, well freed and detached from sense desires. And those intoxicants whose miseries, those fervors which arise in consequence of sense desires, from all these he is freed, nor does he feel that sort of feeling. This is pronounced to be the first deliverance. Dos. Again, friends, when a brother is contemplating thoughts of ill will, his heart does not leap forward to them, nor rest complacent in them, does not choose them. But when he is contemplating renunciation of them, his heart leaps forward, rests complacent in it, chooses it. This frame of mind he gets well in hand, well developed, well lifted up, well freed, and detached from ill will. And those intoxicants whose miseries, those fevers which arise in consequence of, from all these he is freed, nor does he feel that sort of feeling. This is pronounced to be the second deliverance. Again, friends, when a brother is contemplating thoughts of cruelty, his heart does not leap forward to them, nor rest complacent in them, does not choose them. But when he is contemplating renunciation of them, his heart leaps forward, rests complacent in it, chooses it. This frame of mind he gets well in hand, well developed, well lifted up, well freed, and detached from cruelty. And those intoxicants whose miseries, those fevers which arise in consequence of cruelty, from all these he is freed, nor does he feel that sort of feeling. This is pronounced to be the third deliverance. Again, friends, when a brother is contemplating ignorant external objects, his heart does not leap forward to them, nor rest complacent in them, does not choose them. But when he is contemplating renunciation of them, his heart leaps forward, rests complacent in it, chooses it. This frame of mind he gets well in hand, well developed, well lifted up, well freed, and detached from external objects. And those intoxicants whose miseries, those fevers which arise in consequence of external objects, from all these he is freed, nor does he feel that sort of feeling. This is pronounced to be the fourth deliverance. 5. Again, friends, When a brother is contemplating thoughts of individuality, his heart does not leap forward to them, nor rest complacent in them, does not choose them. But when he is contemplating renunciation of them, his heart leaps forward, rests complacent in it, chooses it. This frame of mind he rests this frame of mind he gets well in hand, well developed, well lifted up, well freed and detached from thoughts of individuality. And those intoxicants whose miseries, those fevers which arise in consequence of educational thoughts of individuality, all these he is freed, nor does he feel that sort of feeling. This is pronounced to be the fifth deliverance. Which five are to be brought to pass? The fivefold intuition of perfect concentration. To wit, as a person experiences the intuition that arises that, uno, this rapture is both a present happiness and a future result of happiness. Dos, this rapture is aryan, is unworldly. Tres, this rapture is not a pursuit of anything but the noblest men. This rapture, cuatro, this rapture is benevolent, excellent, has won tranquilization, has attained to mental uplift, and our concentration is not instigated, nor opposed, nor foiled. Cinco, this rapture, I myself with mental clarity attain, and from it with mental clarity emerge. Which five are to be thoroughly learnt? The five occasions of emancipation, to wit, uno. Herein, when the master or a reverend fellow disciple teaches the Dharma to a brother according as the teacher is given, the listener comes to know both the matter of the doctrine and the text of the doctrine. And gladness springs up in him, and in him zest springs up. His mind enraptured, the faculties become serene. With serenity comes happiness, and of him thus happy the heart is stayed and firm. This is the first cessation. This is the first occasion. Dos, in the second place, a brother has a similar experience, not from hearing the master or a reverend fellow disciple teach, but whilst himself teaching others the Dharma in detail, as he has learnt and got it by memory, and he comes to know both the matter of the doctrine and the text of the doctrine. And gladness springs up in him, and in him gladness zest springs up. His mind enraptured, the faculties become serene. With serenity comes happiness, and of him thus happy the heart is stayed and firm. This is the second occasion. In the third place, a brother has a similar experience, not on those first two occasions, but when he is reciting the doctrines of the Dharma in detail, as he has learnt and got them by memory, and he comes to know both the matter of the doctrine and the text of the doctrine. And gladness springs up in him, and in him zest springs up. In his mind enraptured, the faculties become serene. With serenity comes happiness, and of him thus happy the heart is stayed and firm. This is the third occasion. In the fourth place, a brother has a similar experience, not on those first three occasions, but when he applies his thought to the Dharma as he has learnt and got it by memory, and he comes to know both the matter of the doctrine and the text of the doctrine, and sustains protracted meditation on it and contemplates it in mind. And gladness springs up in him, and in him gladness zest springs up. In his mind enraptured, the faculties become serene. With serenity comes happiness, and of him thus happy the heart is stayed and firm. This is the fourth occasion. Finally, a brother has a similar experience, not on those first four occasions, but when he has well grasped some given clue to concentration, has well applied his understanding, has well thought it out, has well penetrated it by intuition. And gladness springs up in him, and in him gladness thus springs up. His mind enraptured, the faculties become serene. With serenity comes happiness, and of him thus happy, the heart is stayed and firm. This is the fifth occasion. Which five are to be realized? The five bodies of doctrine, to wit, morals, concentrative exercise, insight, emancipation, knowledge, and insight requisite for emancipation. Now these five things are genuine, true, thus not otherwise, not different, perfectly comprehended by the Tathagata. Sixes. There are six things, friends, that help with much. 6 things that are to be developed, 6 things that are to be understood, 6 things that are to be eliminated, 6 things that are to belong to disaster, 6 things that lead to distinction, 6 things that are hard to penetrate, 6 things that are brought to pass, 6 things that are to be thoroughly learned, 6 things that are to be realized. Which 6 help much? the 6 occasions of fraternal living, to wit, herein, friends, when a brother's kindly acts towards his fellow disciples has been attested as wrought publicly and in private, that is an occasion of fraternity, causing affection and regard, and conducing to concord, absence of wife, harmony, and union. Dos a tres. The second and third occasions are those of kindly speech and kind thoughts. Cuatro. In the next place, when a brother who has honestly and righteously obtained gifts disturbs these impartially amongst his fellow disciples, and has everything in common with them, even to the contents of his alms bowl, this is an occasion of fraternity. And additionally, next, when the character and ethical habits of a brother are without rupture or flaw, are consistently practiced, unblemished, making a man free, commended by the wise, unperverted, and conducing to rapt concentration, and he, so virtuous, dwells openly and privately amongst his fellow disciples, that is an occasion of fraternity, causing affection and regard, and conducing to concord, absence of strife, harmony, union. Lastly, when a brother lives with his religious life, guided by the Aryan safeguarding belief which leads him so lives to the perfect destruction of sorrow, when he thus equipped lives amongst his fellow disciples publicly and in private, that is an occasion of fraternity like the foregoing. Which 6 are to be developed? The 6 matters for reconciliation, to wit, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, the virtuous precepts, renunciation, the Devas. Which 6 are to be understood? The 6 organs of sense or fields of personal experience, to wit, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, siete, and mind. To wit, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and mind. Which 6 are to be eliminated? The 6 groups of cravings, to wit, the five kinds of sense objects and phenomena. Which 6 belong to decline? The 6 forms of irreverence, to wit, herein, friends, a brother conducts himself irreverently and insolently to the master, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The training or to his studies, or lack in reverence and respect towards the duties of courtesy. Which 6 belong to distinction? The 6 forms of reverence, to wit, herein, friends, a brother conducts himself in the opposite manner in the foregoing 6 cases. Which 6 are hard to penetrate? The 6 elements tending to deliverance, to wit, uno. Herein, friends, a brother might say, lo, I have developed mental emancipation by love. I have multiplied it, made it a vehicle and a base. I have brought it out, accumulated, and set it well going. Nevertheless, malevolence persistently possesses my heart. To him it should be said, not so. Say not so, your reverence. Do not misrepresent the exalted one. It is not well to calumniate the exalted one. Surely he would not say this was so. This is a baseless and uncalled for statement, friend. This cannot be as you say. Emancipation of the heart through love, brother, this is what you become delivered and from malevolence. In the same way, a brother might wrongly complain that after cultivating emancipation of the heart through pity, he was still possessed by cruelty, or that after cultivating emancipation of the heart through sympathetic joy, or through equanimity, he was still possessed by disgust and passion, respectively. Next, friends, a brother might say, lo, I have developed mental emancipation from the power of any object to catch the fancy and insight lust. I have multiplied that emancipation, made it a vehicle and a base. I have brought it out, accumulated, and set it well going. Nevertheless, my mind still pursues seductive objects. Or again, he may say, lo, the notion I am is offensive to me. I pay no heed to the notion exists. Nevertheless, doubts and queries and debating still possess my mind. To these, answers should be made as before. He should be assured that such cannot truly be the case, that it is by emancipating the heart through equanimity, or again through the compulsion or the conceit of the existence of an I, that he becomes delivered from lust and delivered from doubts and queries and debatings. Which 6 are to be brought to pass? The 6 chronic states, to wit, uno a cinco. Herein, friends, a brother on occasion of any of the 5 kinds of sensations. 6. Supplemental. 6. As well as on that of any impression or idea, is neither delighted nor displeased, but remains equable, mindful, and deliberate. Which 6 are to be realized? The 6 super knowledges. Uno. Herein, friends, a brother, uno, enjoys the wondrous gift in its various modes. Being one, he becomes many, or having become many, he becomes one again. He becomes visible or invisible. He goes feeling no obstruction to the further side of a wall or rampart or hill, as if through air. He penetrates up and down through solid ground, as if through water. He walks on water without breaking through, as if on solid ground. He travels cross-legged in the sky, like the birds on wing. Even the moon and the soleil, so potent, so mighty though they be, does not touch and feel with his hand. He reaches in the body, even up to the heaven of Brahma. Dos, with that clear heavenly ear, surpassing the ear of man, he hears both sounds both human and celestial, whether distant or near. Tres, penetrating with his own heart the hearts of other beings, of other men, he knows them. He discerns the passionate mind to be passionate, and the calm mind to be calm. The angry mind to be angry, and the peaceful mind peaceful. The dull mind to be dull, and the alert mind alert. The attentive mind to be attentive, and the wandering mind wandering. The broad mind to be broad, and the narrow mind narrow. The mean mind to be mean, and the lofty mind lofty. The steadfast mind to be steadfast, and the wavering mind to be wavering. The free mind to be freed, and the enslaved mind to be enslaved. Enslaved mind enslaved. Cuatro. He recalls to mind his various temporary states in days gone by. 1 birth, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 births, or 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 100 or 100 or 1,000 or 100,000 births. Through many eon of dissolution, many eon of evolution, many eon of both dissolution and evolution. In such a place, such was my name, such my family, such my caste, such my food, such my experience of discomfort or of ease, and such the limits of my life. When I passed away from that state, I took a form again in such a place. There I had such and such a name, and family and caste and food and experience of discomfort or of ease. Such was the limit of my life. When I passed away from that state, I took form again here. Thus does he call to mind his temporary states in days gone by. Thus does he call to mind his temporary states in days gone by, in all their details and in all their modes. 5. With the pure heavenly eye surpassing that of man, he sees beings as they pass away from him, from one form of existence, and take shape in another. He recognizes the mean and the noble, the well-favored and the ill-favored, the happy and the wretched, passing away according to their deeds. Such and such beings, my brethren, evildoers in act and word and thought, revilers of the noble ones, holding to wrong views, acquiring for themselves that karma which results from wrong views. They, on the dissolution of the body after death, are reborn in some unhappy state of suffering or woe. But such and such beings, my brethren, well-doers in act and word and thought, not revilers of the noble ones, holding to right views, acquiring for themselves that karma that results from right views. They, on the dissolution of the body after death, are reborn in some happy state in heaven. Thus, with the pure heavenly eye surpassing that of men, he sees beings as they pass away from one state of existence and take form in another. He recognizes the mean and the noble, the well-favored and the ill-favored, the happy and the wretched, passing away according to their deeds. Says, he lives in the attainment, the personal knowledge, and the realization through the extinction of the intoxicants, of sane and immune of freedom, of heart and mind. Now these 6 things are genuine, true, thus not otherwise, not different, perfectly comprehended by the Tathagata. There are these 7 things, friends, that help with much, 7 things that are to be developed, 7 things that are to be understood, 7 things that are to be eliminated, 7 things that are to be a disaster, 7 things that lead to distinction, 7 things that are hard to penetrate, 7 things that are to be brought to pass, 7 things that are to be thoroughly learnt, 7 things that are to be realized. which seven help much, the seven treasures, to wit, the treasure of faith, of morals, of conscientiousness, of discretion, of learning, of self-denial, of insight. Which seven are to be developed? Seven factors of enlightenment, to wit, the factor of mindfulness, of study of doctrines, of energy, of zest, of serenity, of concentration, of equanimity. Which seven are to be understood? Seven stations of consciousness. There are beings, brethren, who are diverse both in body and in mind, such as mankind, certain devas, and some who have gone to an evil doom. This is the first station or persistence for reborn consciousness. Other beings are diverse of body, but uniform in mind, such as the devas, of the Brahma world, reborn there from practice here of first jhana. Others are uniform in body, diverse in intelligence, such as the radiant devas. Others are uniform in both in body and in intelligence, such as the illustrious devas. 5. Others there are who, by having passed wholly beyond all consciousness of matter, by the dying out of the consciousness of sense reaction, by having turned the attention away from any consciousness of the manifold and become conscious only of space as infinite, are dwellers in the realm of infinite space. Others there are who, by having passed wholly beyond the realm of infinite space and become conscious only of consciousness as infinite, are dwellers in the realm of infinite consciousness. Others there are, 7. Others there are who, having passed wholly beyond the realm of infinite consciousness and become conscious only that there is nothing whatever, are dwellers in the realm of nothingness. Such are the remaining stations of consciousness. Which seven are to be eliminated? The seven forms of latent bias, to wit, the bias of sensual passion, of enmity, of false opinion, of doubt, of conceit, of lust, for rebirth, of ignorance. Which seven belong to decline? The seven vicious qualities, to wit, want of faith, unconscientiousness, indiscretion, want of doctrinal knowledge, slackness, muddle-headedness, want of insight. Which seven belong to increase? The seven virtuous qualities, to wit, the opposites of the foregoing. Which seven are hard to penetrate? The seven qualities of the benevolent, to wit, knowledge of the Dharma, of the meaning contained in its doctrines, knowledge of self, knowledge how to be temperate, how to choose and keep in time, knowledge of groups, of persons, and of individuals. Which seven are to be brought to pass? The seven perceptions, to wit, that of impermanence, of soullessness, of ugliness, of perfume in the world, of elimination, of passionlessness, of cessation. Which seven are to be thoroughly understood? The seven bases of arahatship. Herein, friends, a brother is keenly desirous of entering the training and longs to continue doing so. He feels similarly with regard to insight into the doctrine, to the suppression of hankerings, to the need of solitude, to evoking energy, to mindfulness and perspicacity, to intuition of the truth. 7 powers of arahatship, of the arahant. Herein, friends, for a brother who is arahant. 1. The impermanence of all conditioned things is well seen as it truly is by perfect insight. This is one of his powers, on account of which he recognizes that for him the intoxicants are destroyed. That serious worldly desires are like coals of fire is well seen as it truly is. His heart is inclined to, set upon detachment, he has made detachment its mountain cave, its object. His heart loves renunciation and has become entirely non-existent for all opportunities of incoming. Threats. His heart is inclined to set upon detachment. He has made detachment his mountain cave, its object. His heart loves renunciation and has become entirely non-existent for all opportunities of incoming intoxicants. This is uno. This is one. Cuatro. The four applications of mindfulness have been developed and well developed. Cinco. So also for the five spiritual faculties. Siete. The seven factors of enlightenment. Siete. The Aryan eightfold path, in that this and those have been developed and well developed. These are powers of the Arhat brother, on account of which he recognizes that for him the intoxicants are destroyed. Now these seven things are genuine, true, thus not otherwise, not different, perfectly comprehended by the Tathagata. Ocho. There are eight things, friends, that help with much, eight things that are to be developed, eight things that are to be understood, eight things that are eight things that are to be eliminated, eight things that belong to disaster, eight things that lead to distinction, eight things that are hard to penetrate, eight things that are to be brought to pass, eight things that are to be thoroughly learnt, eight things that are to be realized. Which eight help much, the eight conditions, the eight causes which conduce to attaining that wisdom in those fundamentals of religious life which have not been attained, to multiplying, expanding, developing, perfecting those that have been attained. Herein, friends, uno. One dwells near the master or near a fellow disciple, occupying the place of teacher, whereby he is strongly established in conscientiousness, prudence, love, and respect. Under such circumstances, he approaches his teachers from time to time and asks and considers, saying, Master, how is this? What does this mean? And to him those reverent ones reveal what is hidden, make plain what is obscure, and dispel any doubts in perplexing matters. When he has heard the doctrine, he succeeds in obtaining a double serenity of mind, that of body and of mind. Cuatro. Further, friends, a brother virtuous, habitually self-restrained with the self-restraint of the canon law, proficient in behavior and propriety, seeing danger in the smallest offense, undertakes to train himself in the stages of the training. This is the fourth condition, the eighth cause of such as conduce to attain that wisdom and influential undertakes to train himself in the stages of the training. This is the fourth condition, the eighth cause of such as conduce to attaining that wisdom in the fundamentals of religious life, which have not been attained, to multiplying, expanding, developing, perfecting those that have been attained. Further, friends, a brother having learned much bears what he has heard in mind and stores it up. And whatever doctrine is lovely in the beginning, in the middle, and the end, both in the letter and in the spirit, commend a religious life that is absolutely fulfilled and made quite clear. Those doctrines are by such a brother much learnt, remembered, treasured by repetition, pondered in mind, well penetrated by intuition. This is the fifth condition, the eighth cause of such as conduce to attaining the wisdom in the fundamentals of religious life, which have been attained to multiplying, expanding, developing, perfecting those that have been attained. 6. Further, friends, a brother is habitually stirring up energy for the elimination of bad qualities, the evoking of benevolent qualities, indomitable, strongly progressing and never shirking with respect to what is benevolent. This is the sixth condition, the eighth cause of such as conduce to attaining that wisdom in the fundamentals of religious life which have not been attained, to multiplying, expanding, and developing, perfecting those that have been attained. 7. Further, friends, he is clear-minded, supremely heedful and discriminating, noting and remembering what has long since been done and spoken. This is the seventh condition, the eighth cause of such as conduce to attaining that wisdom in the fundamentals of religious life, which have not been attained, to multiplying, expanding, developing, perfecting those that have been attained. Further, friends, a brother is habitually contemplating the rise and passing away of the five aggregates of grasping. To wit, such is the material aggregate, such is the cessation, such is its cause, the cessation. Similarly for the four mental aggregates. This is the eighth condition of the eighth cause of such as conduce to attaining that wisdom in the fundamentals of religious life, which have not been attained, to multiplying, expanding, developing, perfecting those that have been attained. Which eight are to be developed? The Aryan Eightfold Path, to wit, right views, intentions, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. Which eight are to be understood? 8 matters of worldly concern, to wit, 8 gains and losses, fame and obscurity, blame and praise, pleasures and pains. Which 8 are to be eliminated? 8 wrong factors of character and conduct, to wit, wrong views, intentions, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. Which 8 belonging to decline? 8 bases of slackness. Herein, friends, uno, let a brother have some work to do. He thinks there's that work I have to do, but the doing of it will tire me. Well then, I shall lie down. He lies down, he stirs up no energy to finish that which is not done, to accomplish the unaccomplished, to realize the unrealized. Dos, or he has been working and thinks, I have been working and the doing of my work has tired me. Then I shall lie down. He lies down, he stirs up no energy to finish that which is not done, to accomplish the unaccomplished, to realize the unrealized. Or he has to make a journey, and he thinks, I have to make a journey, and that will tire me. Well then, I shall lie down. He lies down, he stirs up no energy to finish that which is not done, to accomplish the unaccomplished, to realize the unrealized. Quattro, or he has gone on his journey, and reflects, I have gone on a journey, and that has tired me. Well then, I shall lie down. He lies down, he stirs up no energy to finish that which is not done, to accomplish the unaccomplished, to realize the unrealized. Cinco, or he tours about a village or township for alms and does not obtain his fill of poor or rich food, and thinks, I've gone about village and township for alms and have not attained my fill of poor or rich food. This body of me is attired and benevolent for naught. Well then, I'll lie down. He lies down, he stirs up no energy to finish that which is not done, to accomplish the unaccomplished, to realize the unrealized. Seis, or he tours about a village or township for alms and does obtain his fill of poor or rich food, and thinks, I've gone about a village or township for alms and have obtained my fill of poor or rich food. This body of me is heavy, and I am benevolent for naught except to me like a load of sofa beans. Well then, I'll lie down. He lies down, he stirs up no energy to finish that which is not done, to accomplish the unaccomplished, to realize the unrealized. Siete, or in him some slight ailment has arisen, and he thinks, in this state it is fit I lie down. He lies down, he stirs up no energy to finish that which is not done, to accomplish the unaccomplished, to realize the unrealized. Ocho, or he has recovered from illness, has recently arisen from some indisposition, and he thinks his body is weak and imbenevolent for naught, and lies down, nor stirs up energy to finish that which is not done, to accomplish the unaccomplished, to realize the unrealized. Which 8 belonging to distinction? 8 bases of setting afoot an undertaking. Herein, brethren, uno, let a brother have some work to do. He thinks that there is that work I have to do, but in doing it, I shall not find it easy to attend to the religion of the Buddhas. Well then, I will stir up energy to finish that which is not done, to accomplish the unaccomplished, to realize the unrealized. Dos, or he has done a task, and thinks, I have been working, but I could not attend to the religion of the Buddhas. Well then, I will stir up energy to finish that which is not done, to accomplish the unaccomplished, to realize the unrealized. Tres, or he has to go on a journey, and thinks it will not be easy for him on his way to attend to the religion of the Buddhas, and resolves, well then, I will stir up energy to finish that which is not done, to accomplish the unaccomplished, to realize the unrealized. Quattro, or he has been on a journey, but has not been able to attend to the religion of the Buddhas, and resolves, well then, I will stir up energy to finish that which is not done, to accomplish the unaccomplished, to realize the unrealized. Cinco, or he has toured about village or township for alms and has not obtained his fill of poor or rich food, and he thinks that under the circumstances his body is light and fit for work, and resolves, well then, I will stir up energy to finish that which is not done, to accomplish the unaccomplished, to realize the unrealized. Seis, or he has toured and has obtained his fill, and thinks that under the circumstances his body is strong and fit to work, and resolves, well then, I will stir up energy to finish that which is not done, to accomplish the unaccomplished, to realize the unrealized. Siete, or in him some slight ailment has arisen, and he thinks it is possible that the ailment may grow worse, so that he must stir up energy to finish that which is not done, to accomplish the unaccomplished, to realize the unrealized. Ocho, or he has recovered from illness, has recently risen from some indisposition, and he thinks, I have recovered from illness, I have recently arisen from my indisposition. It is possible that the illness may recur. Well then, I will stir up energy to finish that which is not done, to accomplish the unaccomplished, to realize the unrealized. which 8 are hard to penetrate. 8 untimely, unseizable intervals for life in a religious sangha. Uno. Taught the God of friends is born into the world, Arahat, Buddha Supreme. The Dharma is taught, quenching the passions, extinguishing the passions, leading to enlightenment, and declared by the welfare. And this person is reborn at that time in purgatory. This is the first untimely, unseizable period for living in a religious sangha. Dos. Taught the God of friends is born into the world, Arahat, Buddha Supreme. The Dharma is taught, quenching the passions, extinguishing the passions, leading to enlightenment, declared by the welfare. And this person is reborn at that time in the animal kingdom. This is the second untimely, unseasonable period for living in a religious sangha. Tres. Taught the God of friends is born into the world, Arahat, Buddha Supreme. The Dharma is taught, quenching the passions, extinguishing the passions, leading to enlightenment, declared by the welfare. And this person is reborn at that time amongst the Petas. This is the third untimely, unseasonable period for living in a religious sangha. Cuatro. Taught the God of friends is born into the world, Arahat, Buddha Supreme. The Dharma is taught, quenching the passions, extinguishing the passions, leading to enlightenment, declared by the welfare. And this person is reborn at that time amongst some long-lived Deva community. This is the fourth untimely, unseizable period for living in a religious sangha. Cinco. Taught the God of friends is born into the world, Arahat, Buddha Supreme. The Dharma is taught, quenching the passions, extinguishing the passions, leading to enlightenment, declared by the welfare. And this person is reborn at that time in the border countries amongst unintelligent barbarians, where there is no opening for members of the Sangha or lay brethren. This is the fifth untimely, unseasonable period for living in a religious Sangha. Seis. Taught the God of friends is born into the world, Arahat, Buddha Supreme. The Dharma is taught, quenching the passions, extinguishing the passions, leading to enlightenment, declared by the welfare. And this person is reborn at that time in the middle countries, but he holds wrong opinions, and has perverted vision, holding that gifts, offerings, oblations are as naught, for there is no fruit, no result of deeds well or ill done. There are no parents nor birth without them. There are no recluses or Brahmins in the world who have attained the highest, leading perfect lives, and who, having known and realized each for himself the truth as to this and to the next world, do reveal it. This is the sixth untimely, unseasonable period for living in a religious sangha. Siete. Taught the God of friends is born into the world, Arahat, Buddha Supreme. The Dharma is taught, quenching the passions, extinguishing the passions, leading to enlightenment, declared by the welfare. And though reborn at that time in the middle countries, he is stupid, dull, or deaf, or dumb, unable to know whether a matter has been well said or ill said. This is the seventh untimely, unseasonable period for living in a religious sangha. Ocho. Or finally, friends, the Tathagata has not arisen in the world as Arahat, Buddha Supreme. The Dharma is not taught, quenching the passions, extinguishing the passions, leading to enlightenment as revealed by the welfare. And this person is in that interval reborn in the middle country as intelligent, bright of wit, nor deaf, mute, able to know whether a matter has been well said or ill said. This is the eighth untimely, unseasonable period for living in a religious sangha. Which 8 are to be brought to pass? The 8 thoughts of a Superman. This Dharma is for one of little wants, not for one of great wants. For one who is serenely content, not for the discontented. For one who is detached, not for one who is fond of society. For one who is energetic, not for the slacker. For one who has presence of mind, not a confused mind. For one whose mind is concentrated, not distracted. For one who has insight, not for the unintelligent. For one who delights not in conceit, craving, and opinion, not for one who delights therein. Which 8 are to be thoroughly learnt? The 8 positions of mastery. Uno. When anyone pictures to himself some material feature of his person and sees corresponding features in others, lovely or ugly, as small, transcending this object, he is aware of doing such, thinks, I know, I see. Dos. Or when he has the same experience but sees those features not as small, but as infinitely great, and nevertheless transcending this object, and he is aware of doing such, thinks, I know, I see. Tres. Or when he sees the features in others lovely or ugly, or as small, without first picturing any material feature of his own transcending this object, he is aware of doing such, thinks, I know, I see. Cuatro. Or when he sees the features in others, but sees those features not as small, but as infinitely great, and nevertheless transcending this object, he is aware of doing such, thinks, I know, I see. Cinco. Or when, without the personal preliminary, he sees external shapes of indigo in color, indigo in visible expanse, indigo in luster, as is the Uma flower or a Benares muslin, delicately finished on both sides, transcending this object, he is aware of doing such, thinks, I know, I see. Siete. or shapes of yellow, yellow in color, yellow in visible expanse, yellow in luster, as is the kanikara flower, or Benares muslin, together to delicately finished on both sides, transcending this object, he is aware of doing such. Thinks, I know, I see. Siete, or shapes of red, red in color, red in visible expanse, red in luster, as is the Bandu Jivaka flower, or Benares muslin, delicately finished on both sides, transcending this object, he is aware of doing such. Thinks, I know, I see. Ocho, or shapes of white, white in color, white in visible expanse, white in luster, as is the Metan star, or Benares muslin, delicately finished on both sides, transcends this object and is aware of doing such. Thinks, I know, I see. Which 8 are to be realized? 8 deliverances, to wit, he picturing any material feature of himself sees such material features as they truly are. Not picturing any such, he sees material features external to his own. Tres, he decides that it is beautiful. By passing wholly beyond all consciousness of material qualities, by the dying out of the awareness of sensory reaction, and by the unheeding of any awareness of difference, he enters into and abides in that rapt ecstasy, which is a consciousness of infinite space. Cinco, by passing wholly beyond such a sphere of consciousness, he enters into and abides in that rapt ecstasy, which is a consciousness of infinitude of consciousness itself. Seis, by passing wholly beyond such a sphere of consciousness, he enters into and abides in that rapt ecstasy, which regards consciousness itself as nothing whatever, a sphere of nothingness. Siete, by passing wholly beyond such a sphere, he enters into and abides in that rapt consciousness, which neither is nor yet is not to be called conscience, to be called conscious. Ocho, by passing wholly beyond such a sphere, he enters into and abides in a state of unconsciousness, wherein awareness and feeling cease. Now these 8 things are genuine, true, thus not otherwise, not different, perfectly comprehended by the Tathagata. There are 9 things, friends, that helpeth much, 9 things that are to be developed, 9 things that are to be understood, 9 things that are to be eliminated, 9 things that belong to disaster, 9 things that lead to distinction, 9 things that are hard to penetrate, 9 things that are to be brought to pass, 9 things that are to be thoroughly learnt, 9 things that are to be realized. Which 9 help much? The 9 states of mind and body which are rooted in orderly thinking. To one so thinking, gladness arises in him, gladdened rapture arises, his mind enraptured, the body is satisfied. One whose body is thus appeased is at ease. He being happily at ease, the mind is stayed. With the mind thus stayed, concentrated, he knows, he sees things as they truly are, and he knows that, and he thus knowing, thus seeing, turns in repulsion, repelled, he becomes passionless. Hence he is set free. Which 9 are to be developed? The 9 factors in wrestling for utter purity, to wit, the purification of virtue, of the mind of views, the purification of escaping from doubt, that of intuition and insight into what is the genuine path and what is not, that of intuition and insight into progress, the purification which is intuition and insight, that which is understanding, that which is emancipation. Which 9 are to be understood? 9 spheres inhabited by beings. Uno, there are beings differing in body and differing in intelligence. For instance, human beings and certain of the angels and some of those in purgatory. This is the first resting place for cognition. There are beings differing in body but of uniform intelligence. For instance, the angels of the Brahma heaven who are there reborn by means of the first jhana. This is the second resting place for cognition. Tres, there are beings uniform in body and differing in intelligence. For instance, luminous angels. This is the third resting place for cognition. Cuatro, there are beings uniform in body and of uniform intelligence. For instance, the all-lustrous angels. This is the fourth resting place for cognition. There are beings without perception of feeling. These live in the sphere of the unconscious devas. Seis, there are beings who, having passed wholly beyond awareness of material qualities by the dying out of sensory reaction, by unheeding the awareness of difference, have attained to the sphere of infinite space with a consciousness thereof. Siete, by passing wholly beyond such a sphere of consciousness, enter into and abides in that rapt ecstasy which is a consciousness of infinitude of consciousness itself. Ocho, by passing wholly beyond such a sphere of consciousness, enter into and abides in that rapt ecstasy which regards consciousness itself as nothing whatever, a sphere of nothingness. Nueve, by passing wholly beyond such a sphere, enters into and abides in that rapt consciousness which neither is nor yet is not to be called conscious. Which 9 are to be eliminated? The 9 things springing from craving, to wit, pursuit caused by craving, gain because of pursuit, decision because of gain, desire and passion because of decision, tenacity because of desire and passion, possession because of tenacity, avarice because of possession, watch and ward because of avarice, and many a bad and wicked state of things arising from keeping watch and ward over possessions. Blows and wounds, strife, contradiction and retort, quarreling, slander, and lies. Which 9 are belong to decline? 9 bases of quarreling thus. Quarreling is stirred up at the thought, he has done me an injury, or he is doing me an injury, or he will do me an injury, or he has done, is doing, will do an injury, to one I love, or he has bestowed a benefit, is bestowing, will bestow a benefit on one I dislike. Which 9 are belong to distinction? 9 suppressions of quarreling thus. Quarreling is suppressed by the thought, he has done, is doing, will do me an injury, or he has done, is doing, will do an injury to one I love, or he has bestowed, is bestowing, will bestow a benefit on one I dislike. True, but what gain would there be to either of us if I quarreled about it? Which 9 are hard to penetrate? The 9 differences. On account of difference in the sensory element, a different contact takes place. On account of difference in contact, difference in feeling arises. Hence difference in perception, hence difference in purposive thought, hence difference in active desire, hence difference in greed, hence difference in pursuit, hence difference in gain. Which 9 are to be brought to pass? The 9 perceptions, to wit, perception of ugliness, of death, revulsion from nutriment, physical, sensory, mental disaffection with every worldly impermanence, suffering and impermanence, no soul in that which suffers, elimination, passionlessness. Which 9 are to be thoroughly learnt? Herein, friends, a brother, uno, aloof from sensuous appetites, aloof from evil ideas, enters into, abides in the first jhana, wherein there is initiative and sustained thought, which is born of solitude and is full of zest and ease. Dos. Secondly, when suppressing initiative and sustained thought, he enters into and abides in the second jhana, which is self-evoked, born of concentration, full of zest and ease. And that, set free from initial and sustained thought, the mind grows calm and sure, dwelling on high. Thres. Thirdly, when a brother no longer fired with zest abides calmly contemplative, whilst mindful and self-possessed, he feels in his body that ease whereof Aryans declare. He that is calmly contemplative and aware, he dwelleth at ease, so does he enter into and abide in the third jhana. Quattro. Fourthly, by putting aside ease and by putting aside malaise, by the passing away of the joy and the sorrow he used to feel, he enters into and abides in the fourth jhana, rapture of utter purity of mindfulness and equanimity, wherein neither ease is felt nor any ill. Cinco. By passing wholly beyond all consciousness of material qualities, by the dying out of the awareness of sensory reaction, by the unheeding of any awareness of difference, he enters into and abides in that rapt ecstasy, which is a consciousness of infinite space. Seis. By passing wholly beyond such a sphere of consciousness, he enters into and abides in that rapt ecstasy, which is a consciousness of infinitude of consciousness itself. Siete. By passing wholly beyond such a sphere of consciousness, he enters into and abides in that rapt ecstasy, which regards consciousness itself as nothing whatever, a sphere of nothingness. Ocho. By passing wholly beyond such a sphere, he enters into and abides in that rapt consciousness, which neither is nor yet is not to be called conscious. Nueve. By passing wholly beyond such a sphere, he enters into and abides in a state of unconsciousness, wherein awareness and feeling cease. Which 9 are to be realized? The 9 successional cessations, thus. Taking each of the foregoing 9 in order, by the attainment of uno, first jhana, sensuous perceptions, cease. Dos, second jhana, applied and sustained thoughts, ceases. Tres, third jhana, zest ceases. Cuatro, fourth jhana, respiration ceases. Cinco, by the perception of infinite space, perception of material things ceases. Seis, by the perception of infinite consciousness, perception of infinite space ceases. Siete, by the perception of nothingness, perception of infinite consciousness ceases. Ocho, by the perception that is neither conscious nor yet unconscious, perception of nothingness ceases. Nueve, by the cessation of perception and feeling, perception that is neither conscious nor yet unconscious ceases. Now these 9 things are genuine, true, thus not otherwise, not different, perfectly comprehended by the Tathagata. There are 10 things, friends, that are helped with much, 10 things that are to be developed, 10 things that are to be understood, 10 things that are to be eliminated, 10 things that belong to disaster, 10 things that lead to distinction, 10 things that are hard to penetrate, 10 things that are to be brought to pass, 10 things that are to be thoroughly learnt, 10 things that are to be realized. Which 10 help much? 10 doctrines conferring protection. Uno. Herein, friends, a brother is virtuous, lives self-controlled according to the self-control prescribed in the Vinaya. He has entered on a proper range of conduct. He sees danger in the least of the things he should avoid. He adopts and trains himself in the precepts. Dos. He learns much and remembers and stores up what he has learnt. Those doctrines which, excellent at the start, in the middle, at the end, in the letter, and in their contents, declare the absolutely perfect and pure religious life, these he learns to a great extent, bears them in mind, treasures them by repetition, ponders them in mind, penetrates them by intuition. Tres. He is a friend and an associate and intimate of men of benevolent character. Cuatro. He is affable, endowed with gentleness and humility. He is patient and receives admonition with deference. Cinco. Where there are duties to be done for the seniors amongst his fellow disciples, he therein is industrious, not slothful, and exercises forethought and methods for discharging them, is capable of accomplishing, capable of organizing. Seis. And further, friends, he loves the doctrine, the utterance of it is dear to him. He finds exceeding joy in the advanced teaching of both Dharma and discipline. Vinaya. Siete. Further, friends, he is content with necessaries of any quality, whether it be raiment, alms, lodging, drugs, and provision against sickness. Ocho. Further, friends, he is continually stirring up effort to eliminate bad qualities, evoke benevolent qualities, making dogged and vigorous progress in benevolent things, never throwing off the burden. Nueve. Further, friends, he is mindful and possessed of supreme lucidity and perspicacity, in following mentally and recollecting deeds and words long past. Yes, further, friends, he is intelligent, endowed with insight into the rise and passing away of things, insight which is of the Aryan penetration which leads to the complete destruction of pain, as is which 10 must be developed. 10 objects for self-hypnosis. These perceived severally as above, below, or across, and as homogeneous and without limits, are a portion of earth, extended matter, water, fire, air, indigo, yellow, red, white, space, consciousness. Which 10 must be understood. The 10 areas of sense contact, to wit the 5 organs of sense, special sense, and the 5 kinds of sense objects. Which 10 must be eliminated. The 10 wrong factors of character and conduct, to wit wrong views, wrong purposes, wrong speech, wrong action, and wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, and wrong concentrative practice, wrong knowledge, wrong emancipation. Which 10 belong to decline. 10 bad channels of action, to wit taking life, theft, inchastity, lying, abuse, slander, idle talk, covetousness, malevolence, wrong views. Which 10 belong to distinction. The 10 benevolent channels of action, to wit abstention from taking life, abstention from theft, abstention from inchastity, abstention from lying, abstention from abuse, abstention from slander, abstention from idle talk, abstention from covetousness, abstention from malevolence, abstention from wrong views. Which 10 are hard to penetrate. 10 Aryan methods of living. Herein, friends, a brother has got rid of 5 factors, is possessed of 6 factors, has set the one guard, carries out the 4 bases of observance, has put away sectarian opinions, has utterly given up quests, is candid in his thoughts, has calmed the restlessness of his body, and is well emancipated in heart and intellect. Uno. What 5 factors has he got rid of? Sensuality, malevolence, sloth and torpor, excitement and worry, doubt. Dos. What 6 factors is he possessed of? The 6 chronic states. Herein, friends, a brother on occasion of any of the 5 kinds of sensation, as well as on that of any impression or idea, is neither delighted nor displeased, but remains equable, mindful, and deliberate. How has he set the one guard? By the mental guard of mindfulness. What are the 4 bases of observance? Herein a brother judges that something is to be habitually pursued, endured, avoided, suppressed. How does he become one who has put away sectarian opinions? All those many opinions of the mass of recluses and Brahmins which are held by individuals as dogmas, all these he has dismissed, put away, given up, ejected, let go, eliminated, abandoned. How is he one whose questing is utterly given up? He has eliminated the questing after worldly desires, the questing for rebirth, the questing for religious life. How is he candid in his thoughts? He has eliminated occupying his mind with sensual, malicious, or cruel ideas. How does he tranquilize the activity of the body? Because of eliminating the being affected pleasurably or painfully, because of the dying out of previous impressions as joyful or sorrowful. He attains to and abides in a state of neutral feeling, of very pure indifference and mental lucidity, namely the state called 4th jhana. How does he become well emancipated in heart? He becomes emancipated in heart from passion, hate, and illusion. How does he become well emancipated in intellect? He understands his emancipated condition, namely in the thought. Passion for me is eliminated, cut off at the root, become as a palm tree stump, become non-existent, unable to grow again in future. Hate for me is eliminated, cut off at the root, become as a palm tree stump, become non-existent, unable to grow again in future. Illusion for me is eliminated, cut off at the root, become as a palm tree stump, become non-existent, unable to grow again in future. Which 10 must be brought to pass? The 10 perceptions, to wit, perception of ugliness, of death, revulsion from nutriment, physical, sensory, mental, disaffection with everything worldly, impermanence, suffering and impermanence, no soul in that which suffers, elimination, passionlessness, and of cessation. Which 10 are to be thoroughly learnt? The 10 causes of wearing away. By right views, wrong views are worn away. Whatever manifold bad and wicked qualities proceeding from those wrong views take shape, they are worn away in you. And many benevolent qualities caused by right views become developed and brought to perfection. The same wearing away is brought by the other 9 factors of the 10-fold path on the opposed 9 wrong factors of character and conduct. Which 10 are to be realized? 10 qualities belong to the adept, to wit, the right or perfect views and right speech, right or perfect views, right intentions, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, right insight, right emancipation as held by adepts. Now these 10 things are genuine, true, thus not otherwise, not different, perfectly comprehended by the Tathagata. Thus spake the Venerable Sariputta, and please in mind those brethren delighted in his words. Gospels, Acts 13:15. Now in the church at Antioch there were prophets and teachers, Barnabas, Simeon, called Niger, Lucius of Cyrene, Manaen, who had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch, and Saul. Whilst they were honoring the Master and fasting, the Holy Spirit said, Set apart for me Barnabas and Saul for the work to which I have called them. So after they had fasted and prayed, they placed their hands on them and sent them off. The 2 of them, sent on their way by the Holy Spirit, went down to Seleucia, and sailed from there to Cyprus. When they arrived at Salamis, they proclaimed the word of God in the Jewish brethren synagogues. John was with them as their helper. They traveled through the whole island until they came to Paphos. There they met a Jewish brethren, sorcerer and false prophet named Bar-Jesus, who was an attendant of the proconsul Sergius Paulus. The proconsul, an intelligent man, sent for Barnabas and Saul because he wanted to hear the word of God. But Elymas, the sorcerer, for that is what his name means, opposed them and tried to turn the proconsul from the faith. Then Saul, who was also called Paul, filled with the Holy Spirit, looked straight at Elymas and said, You are a child of the devil and an enemy of everything that is right. You are full of all kinds of deceit and trickery. Will you never stop perverting the right ways of the Master? Now the hand of the Master is against you. You are going to be blind for a time, not even able to see the light of the soleil. Immediately mist and darkness came over him, and he groped about, seeking someone to lead him by the hand. When the proconsul saw what had happened, he believed, for he was amazed at the teaching about the Master. From Paphos, Paul and his companions sailed to Perga in Pamphylia, where John left them to return to Jerusalem. From Perga they went on to Pisidian Antioch. On Shabbat they entered the synagogue and sat down. After the reading from the law and the prophets, the leaders of the synagogue sent word to them, saying, Brothers, if you have a word of exhortation for the people, please speak. Standing up, Paul motioned with his hand and said, Fellow Israelites, and you Gentiles who worship God, listen to me. The God of the people of Israel chose our ancestors. God made the people prosper during their stay in Egypt. With mighty power, God led them out of that country. For about 40 years God endured their conduct in the wilderness, and God overthrew 7 nations in Canaan, giving their land to God's people as their inheritance. All this took about 450 years. After this God gave them judges until the time of Samuel the prophet. Then the people asked for a king, and God gave them Saul, son of Kish, of the tribe of Benjamin, who ruled 40 years. After removing Saul, God made David their king. God testified concerning him, I have found David, son of Jesse, a man after my own heart. He will do everything I want him to do. From this man's descendants, God has brought to Israel the Savior, Jesus, as God promised. Before the coming of Jesus, John preached repentance and baptism to all the people of Israel. As John was completing his work, he said, Who do you suppose I am? I am not the one you are looking for, but there is one coming after me whose sandals I am not worthy to untie. Fellow children of Abraham, and you God-fearing Gentiles, it is to us that this message of salvation has been sent. The people of Yerushalayim and their rulers did not recognize Jesus, yet in condemning him, they fulfilled the words of the prophets that are read every Shabbat. Though they found no proper ground for a death sentence, they asked Pilate to have him executed. When they carried out all that was written about him, they took him down from the cross and laid him in a tomb. But God raised him from the dead, and for many days he was seen by those who had traveled with him from Galilee to Yerushalayim. They are now his witnesses to our people. We tell you the benevolent news, what God promised our ancestors. God has fulfilled for us their children by raising up Jesus. God has fulfilled for us their children by raising up Jesus. As it is written in the second psalm, You are my son, today I have become your creator. God raised him from the dead so that he will never be subject to decay. As God has said, I will give you the holy and sure blessings promised to David. So it is also stated elsewhere, You will not let your Holy One see decay. Now when David had served God's purpose in his own generation, he fell asleep, and he was buried with his ancestors, and his body decayed. But the one whom God raised from the dead did not see decay. Therefore, my friends, I want you to know that through Jesus the forgiveness of sins is proclaimed to you. Through him everyone who believes is set free from every sin, a justification you were not able to obtain under the law of Moshe. Take care that what the prophets have said does not happen to you. Look, you scoffers, wonder and perish, for I am going to do something in your days that you would never believe, even if someone told you. As Paul and Barnabas were leaving the synagogue, the people invited them to speak further about these things on the next Shabbat. When the congregation was dismissed, many of the Jewish brethren and devout converts to Judaism followed Paul and Barnabas, who talked with them and urged them to continue in the grace of God. On the next Shabbat, almost the whole city gathered to hear the word of the Master. When the Jewish brethren saw the crowds, they were filled with jealousy. They began to contradict what Paul was saying and heaped abuse on him. Then Paul and Barnabas answered them boldly, We had to speak the word of God to you first. Since you reject it and do not consider yourselves worthy of eternal life, we now turn to the Gentiles. For this is what the Master has commanded us. I have made you a light for the Gentiles, that you may bring salvation to the ends of the earth. When the Gentiles heard this, they were glad and honored the word of the Master, and all who were appointed for eternal life believed. The word of the Master spread through the whole region, but the Jewish brethren leaders incited the God-fearing women of high standing and the leading men of the city. They stirred up persecution against Paul and Barnabas and expelled them from their region. So they shook the dust off their feet as a warning to them and went to Iconium. And the disciples were filled with joy and with the Holy Spirit. At Iconium, Paul and Barnabas went as usual to the Jewish brethren synagogues. There they spoke so effectively that a great number of Jewish brethren and Greeks believed. But the Jewish brethren who refused to believe stirred up the other Gentiles and poisoned their minds against the brothers. Paul and Barnabas spent considerable time there, speaking boldly for the Master, who confirmed the message of his grace by enabling them to perform signs and wonders. The people of the city were divided. Some sided with the Jewish brethren, others with the apostles. There was a plot afoot amongst both Gentiles and Jewish brethren, together with their leaders, to mistreat them and stone them. But they found out about it and fled to the Lycaonian cities of Lystra and Derbe, and to the surrounding country, where they continued to preach the gospel. In Lystra there sat a man who was lame. He had been that way from birth and had never walked. He listened to Paul, and as he was speaking, Paul looked directly at him, saw that he had faith to be healed, and called out, "Stand up on your feet." And at that the man jumped up and began to walk. When the crowd saw what Paul had done, they shouted in the Lycaonian language, the deities have come down to us in human form. Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul they called Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. The priest of Zeus, whose temple was just outside the city, brought bulls and wreaths to the city gates because he and the crowd wanted to offer sacrifices to them. But when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of this, they tore their clothes and rushed out into the crowd, shouting, "Friends, why are you doing this? We too are only human like you. We are bringing you benevolent news, telling you to turn from these worthless things to the living God, who made the heavens and the earth and the sea and everything in them. In the past, God let all nations go their own way. Yet God has not left God's self without testimony. God has shown kindness by giving you rain from heaven and crops in their seasons. God provides you with plenty of food and fills your hearts with joy." Even with these words, they had difficulty keeping the crowd from sacrificing to them. Then some Jewish brethren came from Antioch and Iconium and won the crowd over. They stoned Paul and dragged him outside the city, thinking he was dead. But after the disciples had gathered around him, he got up and went back into the city. The next day, he and Barnabas left for Derbe. They preached the gospel in that city and won a large number of disciples. Then they returned to Lystra, Iconium, and Antioch, strengthening the disciples and encouraging them to remain true to the faith. "We must go through many hardships to enter the sovereignty of God," they said. Paul and Barnabas appointed elders for them in each church, and with prayer and fasting committed them to the Master in whom they had put their trust. After going through Pisidia, they came into Pamphylia, and when they had preached the word in Perga, they went down to Attalia. From Attalia they sailed back to Antioch, where they had been committed to the grace of God for the work they had now completed. On arriving there, they gathered the church together and reported all that God had done through them and how God had opened a door of faith to the Gentiles. And they stayed there a long time with the disciples. Certain people came down from Judea to Antioch and were teaching the believers, "Unless you are circumcised according to the custom taught by Moshe, you cannot be saved." This brought Paul and Barnabas into sharp dispute and debate with them. So Paul and Barnabas were appointed, along with some other believers, to go up to Jerusalem to see the apostles and elders about this question. The church sent them on their way, and as they traveled through Phoenicia and Samaria, they told how the Gentiles had been converted. This news made all the believers very glad. When they came to Jerusalem, they were welcomed by the church and the apostles and elders, to whom they reported everything God had done through them. Then some of the believers who belonged to the party of the Pharisees stood up and said, "The Gentiles must be circumcised and required to keep the law of Moshe." The apostles and elders met to consider this question. After much discussion, Peter got up and addressed them. "Brothers, you know that some time ago God made a choice amongst you that the Gentiles might hear from my lips the message of the gospel and believe. God, who knows the heart, showed that God accepted them by giving the Holy Spirit to them, just as God did to us. God did not discriminate between us and them, for God purified their hearts by faith. Now then, why do you try to test God by putting on the necks of Gentiles a yoke that neither we nor our ancestors have been able to bear? No, we believe it is through the grace of our Master Jesus that we are saved, just as they are." The whole assembly became silent as they listened to Barnabas and Paul telling about the signs and wonders God had done amongst the Gentiles through them. When they finished, James spoke up. "Brothers," he said, "listen to me. Simon has described to us how God has first intervened to choose a people for God's name from the Gentiles. The words of the prophets are in agreement with this, as it is written, 'After this I will return and rebuild David's fallen tent, its ruins I will rebuild, and I will restore it, that the rest of mankind may seek the Master, even all the Gentiles who bear my name, says the Master, who does these things known from long ago. It is my judgment, therefore, that we should not make it difficult for the Gentiles who are turning to God. Instead, we should write to them, telling them to abstain from food polluted by idols, from sexual indecency, from the meat of strangled animals, and from blood. For the law of Moshe has been preached in every city from the earliest times, and is read in the synagogues on every Shabbat." Then the apostles and elders with the whole church decided to choose some of their own men and send them to Antioch with Paul and Barnabas. They chose Judas, called Barsabbas, and Silas, men who were leaders amongst the believers. With them they sent the following letter: "The apostles and elders, your brothers, to the Gentiles believers in Antioch, Syria, and Cilicia, greetings. We have heard that some went out from us without our authorization and disturbed you, troubling your minds by what they said. So we all agreed to choose some men and send them to you with our dear friends Barnabas and Paul, men who have risked their lives for the name of our Master Jesus Christ. Therefore we are sending Judas and Silas to confirm by word of mouth what we are writing. It seemed benevolent to the Holy Spirit and to us not to burden you with anything beyond the following requirements. You are to abstain from food sacrificed to idols, from blood, from the meat of strangled animals, and from sexual indecency. You will do well to avoid these things." So the men were sent off and went down to Antioch, where they gathered the church together and delivered the letter. The people read it and were glad for its encouraging message. Judas and Silas, who themselves were prophets, said much to encourage and strengthen the believers. After spending some time there, they were sent off by the believers with the blessing of peace to return to those who had sent them. But Paul and Barnabas remained in Antioch, where they and many others taught and preached the word of the Master. Sometime later, Paul said to Barnabas, "Let us go back and visit the believers in all the towns where we preach the word of the Master and see how they are doing." Barnabas wanted to take John also, called Mark, with them. But Paul did not think it wise to take him, because he had deserted them in Pamphylia and had not continued with them in their work. They had such a sharp disagreement that they parted company. Barnabas took Mark and sailed for Cyprus. But Paul chose Silas and left, commended by the believers to go to the grace of the Master. He went through Syria and Cilicia, strengthening the churches. Quran. Surah Abasa, Surah Al-Takwir, Surah Al-Intifar, Surah Al-Mutafifin, Surah Inshikak, 80 a 84. Surah Abasa, 80. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. The Prophet frowned and turned away, because there came to him the blind man, Abdullah bin Maktum, who came to the Prophet whilst he was preaching to one of or some of the Quraysh chiefs. But what could he tell you that perchance he might become pure from sins, or that he might receive admonition, and that the admonition might benefit him? As for him who thinks himself self-sufficient, to him you attend. What does it matter to you if he will not become pure from disbelief? You are only a messenger. Your duty is to convey the message of Allah. But as to him who came to you running, and is afraid of Allah and Allah's punishment, of him you are neglectful and divert your attention to another. Nay, do not do like this. Indeed, these verses of this Quran are an admonition. So whoever wills, let him pay attention to it. It is in records held greatly in honor, al-lual al-mahfuz, exalted in dignity, purified, in the hands of scribes, angels. Honorable and obedient. Be cursed the disbelieving man, how ungrateful he is. From what thing did Allah create him? From nufta, male and female semen drops, Allah created him and then set him in due proportion. Then Allah makes the path easy for him. Then Allah causes him to die and puts him in his grave. Then when it is Allah's will, Allah will resurrect him again. Nay, but man has not done what Allah commanded him. Then let man look at his food, that we pour forth water in abundance, and we split the earth in clefts, and we cause therein the grain to grow, and grapes and clover plants, green fodder for the cattle, and olives and date palms, and gardens dense with many trees, and fruits and herbage, to be a provision and benefit for you and your cattle. Then when there comes Asaka, the day of resurrection, second blowing of trumpet, that day shall a man flee from his brother, and from his more and his far, and from his wife and his children. Every man that day will have enough to make him careless of others. Some faces that day will be bright, true believers of Islamic monotheism, laughing, rejoicing at benevolent news of paradise. And other faces that day will be dust-stained. Darkness will cover them. Such will be the kafara, disbelievers in Allah, in Allah's oneness, and in Allah's Messenger, Muhammad, the fajara, wicked evildoers. Surah At-Takwir, 81. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The Prophet frowned and turned away. When the stars fall, losing their luster, when the mountains vanish like a mirage, when the she-camels 10 months with young are left untended, when the wild beasts are herded together in the human habitations, when the oceans boil over with a swell, when the souls are sorted out, being joined like with like, when the female infant buried alive is questioned, for what crime she was killed. When the scrolls are laid open, when the world on high is unveiled, when the blazing fire is kindled to the fierce heat, and when the garden is brought near, then shall each soul know what it has put forward. So verily I call to witness the planets that recede, go straight or hide, and the night as it dissipates, and the dawn as it breathes away the darkness. Verily this is the word of a most honorable messenger, endued with power, with rank before the Lord of the throne, with authority there, and faithful to his trust. O people, your companion is not one possessed, and without doubt he saw him in the clear horizon. Neither doth he withhold grudgingly a knowledge of the unseen, nor is it the word of an evil spirit accursed. Whither go ye? Verily this is no less than a message to all the worlds, with benefit to whoever amongst you wills to go straight. But ye shall not will except as Allah wills, the cherisher of the worlds. Surah Al-Intifar, 82. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. When the sky is cleft asunder, when the stars are scattered, when the oceans are suffered to burst forth, and when the graves are turned upside down, then shall each soul know what it hath sent forward and what it hath kept back. O man, what has seduced thee from thy Lord most beneficent? Allah, who created thee, fashioned thee in due proportion, and gave thee a just bias. In whatever form Allah wills does Allah put thee together. Nay, but ye do reject right and judgment. But verily over you are appointed angels to protect you, kind and honorable, writing down your deeds. They know and understand all that ye do. As for the righteous, they will be in bliss, and the wicked they will be in the fire, which they will enter on the day of judgment, and they will not be able to keep away therefrom. And what will explain to thee what the day of judgment is? Again, what will explain to thee what the day of judgment is? It will be the day when no soul shall have power to do aught for another, for the command that day will be holy with Allah. Surah Al-Mutaffifin, 83. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. Woe to those that deal in fraud, those who, when they have to receive by measure from men, exact full measure, but when they have to give by measure or wait to men, give less than due. Do they not think that they will be called to account on a mighty day, a day when all mankind will stand before the Lord of the worlds? Day, surely the record of the wicked is preserved in Sijin, and what will explain to thee what Sijin is? There is a register fully inscribed. Woe that day to those that deny the day of judgment, and none can deny it but the transgressor beyond bounds, the sinner. When our signs are rehearsed to him, he says tales of the ancients. By no means, but on their hearts is the stain of the ill which they do. Verily, from the light of their Lord that day will they be veiled. Further, they will enter the fire of hell. Further, it will be said to them, this is the reality which ye rejected as false. Day, verily the record of the righteous is preserved in Iliyin. And what will explain to thee what Iliyin is? There is a register fully inscribed, to which bear witness those nearest to Allah. Truly the righteous will be in bliss. On thrones of dignity will they command a sight of all things. Thou wilt recognize them in their faces, the beaming brightness of bliss. Their thirst will be slaked with pure wine sealed. The seal thereof will be musk, and for this let those aspire who have aspirations. With it will be given a mixture of tasneem, a spring from the waters whereof drink those nearest to Allah. Those in sin used to laugh at those who believed, and whenever they passed by them, used to wink at each other in mockery. And when they returned to their own people, they would return jesting. And whenever they saw them, they would say, behold, these are the people truly astray. But they had not been sent as keepers over them. But on this day, the believers will laugh at the unbelievers. On thrones of dignity, they will command a sight of all things. Will not the unbelievers have been paid back for what they did? Surah Inshikak, 84. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. When the sky is rent asunder, and hearkens to the command of its Lord, and it must needs do so, and when the earth is flattened out, and cast forth what is within it, and becomes clean empty, and hearkens to the command of its Lord, and it must needs do so, Then will come home the full reality. O thou man, verily thou art ever toiling on towards thy Lord, painfully toiling. But thou shalt meet Allah. Then he who is given his record in his right hand, soon will his account be taken by an easy reckoning, and he will turn to his people rejoicing. But he who is given his record behind his back, soon will he cry for perdition, and he will enter a blazing fire. Truly did he go about amongst his people rejoicing. Truly did he think that he would not have to return to us. Nay, nay, for his Lord was ever watchful of him. So I do call to witness the ruddy glow of Soleset, the night and its homing, and the moon in her fullness. Ye shall surely travel from stage to stage. What then is the matter with them, that they believe not? And when the Quran is read to them, they fall not prostrate. But on the contrary, the unbelievers reject it. But Allah has full knowledge of what they secrete in their breasts. So announce to them a penalty grievous, except to those who believe and work righteous deeds. For them is a reward that will never fail. Ki Teitzei 46 a 51. 46. When the world has the Tao, fast horses are retired to till the soil. When the world lacks the Tao, war horses give birth on the battlefield. There is no crime greater than greed, no disaster greater than discontentment, no fault greater than avarice. Thus the satisfaction of contentment is the lasting satisfaction. Siete. Without going out the door, know the world. Without peering out the window, see the heavenly Tao. The further one goes, the less one knows. Therefore the sage knows without going, names without seeing, achieves without striving. 48. Pursue knowledge, daily gain. Pursue Tao, daily loss. Loss and further loss, until one reaches unattached action. With unattached action, there is nothing one cannot do. Take the world by constantly applying non-interference. The one who interferes is not qualified to take the world. The sages have no constant mind. They take the mind of the people as their mind. Those who are benevolent, I am benevolent to them. Those who are not benevolent, I am also benevolent to them. Thus the virtue of benevolence. Those who believe, I believe them. Those who do not believe, I also believe them. Thus the virtue of belief. The sages live in the world. They cautiously merge their mind for the world. The people all pay attention with their ears and eyes. The sages care for them as children. 50. Coming into life, entering death. The followers of life, 3 and 10. The followers of death, 3 and 10. Those whose lives are moved towards death, also 3 and 10. Why? Because they live lives of excess. I've heard of those who are beneficial at cultivating life. Traveling on the road, they do not encounter rhinos or tigers. Entering into an army, they are not harmed by weapons. Rhinos have nowhere to thrust their horns. Tigers have nowhere to clasp their claws. Soldiers have nowhere to lodge their blades. Why? Because they have no place for death. 51. Tao produces them. Virtue raises them. Things shape them. Forces perfect them. Therefore, all things respect the Tao and value virtue. The respect for Tao, the value of virtue, not due to command but to constant nature. Thus Tao produces them, virtue raises them, grows them, educates them, perfects them, matures them, nurtures them, protects them, produces but does not possess, acts but does not flaunt, nurtures but does not dominate. This is called mystic virtue. Alhamdulillah Rahman Rahim, Allahu Abham. Deus nos aqui em Chile Santo Fakita no Matum, Vahengusanam. Dao Kudafe Hundam. Ja. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kazan b'mitzvotav v'zivon sok b'davai Torah. Amen. Kyrie eleison. Sevo mastu sabajagatahi. Sabe sata b'avantu sukitata. Fagabia. Umbutu. Shabbanom. Fekako. Aquaba upendo na amani. Umejaka. Sheshe. Kamosanida. Domo arigato. Peluma yelo wakanto. Talk adokashin. Good. God, we thank you for all that you bless us. Go into God. Ata Jamayata Fanami. Aho. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Amen. Alhamdulillah Rahmani Rahim. Allahu Abha. Deus noste qui es in celis. Sanctificato nomen tuum. Vahigu sama. Dao kudao fehum dao. Ja. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Kyrie eleison. Siva mastu savajagatahi. Sabe sata b'avantu sukitata. Fagabia. Ubuntu. Shabbono. Fekako. Aquaba upendo na amani. Umejaka. Sheshe. Kamosanida. Domo arigato. Peluma yelo wakanto. Talk adokashin good. God, we thank you for all that you bless us. Go into God. Ata Jamayata Fanami. Aho. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste, assalamu alaikum, shalom, zaijian, adios, te jakaris, sempre ne asumudwo, kele ufrid. More love and peace.